Hey guys, and welcome to my first video on soft data science. So I have a few topics lined up, and this is more so of an introductory video to see what you think, and if there's anything that I could change, or if there's any specifics that you would like to talk about. But there are 6 things that are of interest to me and that I think would be very helpful for all of you out there looking to improve on the soft side of data science. And what exactly do I mean by the soft side? So I'm talking about communication skills, organizational skills, and what I like to call abstraction skills, and this idea of taking complex business problems into some sort of data science driven solution. Now, this is very difficult, and I'm still learning this, and I think this is really a never-ending process because it is very problem dependent. Tip number 1. I like to think of my communication environment at the workplace based on 3 different modes: intra, inter, and external. Intra focuses on within the data team. Now, this is a set style of language that focuses on highly technical and highly quantitative language. Inter focuses on still within this technical environment, still very technical, but outside of this data team. And external focuses on speaking to clients, speaking to stakeholders, speaking to anyone outside of your department. Now, a quick and a good tip that I can give you for this is by focusing on how to switch between these modes. So really a really good practice for this is intentionally going out and speaking to these different groups and discussing your work, and also listening to others' work and how they discuss their work. You also don't want to spend the entire time talking about yourself. That's defeat the purpose of this video. Tip number 2 is it's not personal. Now, this is very difficult because in the workplace the environment can get very heated, and some people can take things very personally. I know I've taken things personally. I know I've been competitive in some cases, and it has not helped me at all. So a good example of this might be a colleague is either jealous or very competitive of your work, and you see this come through their communication. They talk down at you. They might talk about you behind your back. And now you're in a professional environment, so don't give in to this. And if someone talks behind your back, don't do it as well. It's a workplace, this isn't high school. And I know this is very tough, as some workplaces, they have this high school mentality. This is something to look out for, and it's not a healthy environment. However, if you're in this position, a really good tip that I would like to give you is to, and I know this is hard, to be mindful of the other person. If they're not mindful of you, it's good if you beat this trend and you're mindful of them. Because the most common cause of this competitive or this personal, this tough, tense environment is insecurity. So a really good way to defeat this or to work with this is to show that this colleague is valuable and bring value to their life. It may be tough given the flack that you've taken on, but at the end of the day, you want a nice working environment and you want to work well together. So a good example might be, hey, I took a look at your work and I really liked it. I really liked A, B, and C. I thought this was great. Could you show me how to do this? Doing simple things like this really engages this person, and it helps them it makes them feel valuable. And it shows that you're not in competition with them. You admire them, you respect them. Tip number 3 is abstraction. This is a difficult process, and this is an entire video on its own, so I'll just give a brief introduction to abstraction. Abstraction focuses on taking the very complex quantitative and technical components of your work and abstracting them in order to communicate them to different modes, from your intra, inter to external. This is a very, very tough thing to do. But a good technique I like to use is analogies. Be mindful of the other person. Be mindful of what they're interested in and what common ground you might have between them. For example, the person you're talking to might work in sales. So maybe you have to communicate something to do with a problem that you're having with model development. Perhaps you're using a different model that doesn't predict the thing that your colleague or your colleague in sales who needs this model, they won't be able to grasp. So use a smart analogy with something they might understand. And it doesn't have to be work related. You might know that this colleague is very into animals. So you might discuss, well, this model is a tree model. So imagine that you have several dogs and you want to find the right dog. And in order to find the right dog, you might look at things and go, do I like brown-haired dogs or do I like black-haired dogs? Was it head? Fur? Either way, do I prefer the brown ones? Do I prefer the black ones? Yes or no? Okay, I've made this decision. Now, where do I go from here? And this is sort of a very basic example of describing a tree algorithm. The next tip is testing. And this is a very important tip for data scientists. So, what do I mean by testing? I mean, given the scenario that maybe a colleague or your boss or someone else working on a project with you gives you an idea or gives you a project that you know will not work. From your expertise, it's a failed project, or it will work. It'll be a very good project, but they don't believe you. So your best bet isn't to come in guns blazing and say, listen to me, I'm the data scientist here, I'm the expert. It would be to show them through testing, and this is the benefit of being a data scientist. You can synthesize data, or you could synthesize a scenario where this problem actually wouldn't work. Given your data constraints, maybe you can't do this. Or what do we actually need in order to solve this project? Use this time to build a test or build a sub-scenario to do this. On the opposite side, if we're thinking in terms of software engineering, if a client comes to a software engineer or their boss and says, we want this specific product, could you make this for us? And he or she knows it's not possible. He or she openly has to say, this isn't possible due to X, Y, and Z. And they might say, I don't care, I want it. Give me this product. This could be very tough, as you would have to go through a lot of testing as a software engineer to say this won't work. But as a data scientist, and being equipped with Jupyter notebooks or however else you structure your data science career, I know I work with Python. If you're working with R, I'm sure there's the same procedural steps that you can take. You can take subsets of data that you've synthesized to show specific things and walk through this process with your boss or with your colleagues to show, hey, look, this isn't going to work. Tip number 5 is logic. Now, it's a very obvious one. I hope we all use logic, as we come from a very logical background. But this is also very necessary in communication, and it's very important to make sure that you have a logically sound process through your communication. So if you speak of A and A implies B and B implies C, you have to make sure that there's a very good medium from A to C to D, whatever the conclusion may be, that at each point you have sound evidence for these arguments. So a good example might be, I built this model, A. I built this model based off of weight factors and age of the person to predict whether they want a certain product or not, because these have been found to be the best predictors Therefore, I suggest we use this model in our product. Therefore, I suggest this product go to be sold on whatever. So this, sorry for the example, is something I just had to come up the top of my head. I didn't really know what kind of example to use here. But another key point I'd like to bring up is not just your argument, but your colleagues and your bosses and clients' arguments as well. And there's a really nice rule called the rule of charity, which is you try and help your colleague to build their argument. Now, by argument, I don't mean a fight, a verbal argument where who will win. It's cases of logic where you're trying to understand what they want from you, and then inversely trying to understand what they want from, what you want from them and what they want from you. So you want to reach common ground there. So when you're listening to someone else propose some chain of logic and they say, I believe in this because it creates this and creates this, but they're missing some component in the middle, help them to find this component. So a good example would be your colleague says, I want to build a model that predicts customer satisfaction. So from where, from what, using what data, why would you like to do this, what value does it bring, and so on. Although these questions might be very obvious and the person might feel attacked, make sure to propose or confront these situations with a clear head, remain professional, remember it's not personal, be mindful of the other person and say, hey, sounds like a great idea. What kind of data were you thinking of using? Or where do we get this data from? Do we have this data? Help them to build this argument because they might realize, actually, yeah, I would need to think about this a bit more, and so on. Everyone is unique, everyone is different, and we all have different experiences. So how we build our arguments and how we build our communication, our structure is very different. And I think the most important thing I want you to take away from this is how to be mindful of this and approach it from a more empathetic view. Which brings us on to our next tip and our last tip, mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is tough, and it's a practice of its own. It's a topic of its own. It's well covered by various other videos out there that focus on how to build mindful qualities, I would say, and how to build that mindful perspective. But one thing that's really helped me is to meditate. Now, meditation, I really believe in meditation. I think it's great, helps you to focus. But I just spend 10 to 15 minutes before I start work. I grab a coffee. I have the small morning ritual where I sit down, put my headphones on, think about my breathing, and reflect. I reflect on my interactions. I reflect on my work. And this really helps me think about the people I work with, think about the things I've done, think about the things I would like to do, how can I improve, and what I'm happy about. Not so much a critique of myself, but what do I feel? I feel good about certain achievements, and how can I help other people get these other achievements? Because in the workplace, you're a team, and that's how it works. So the last tip I'd like to give you is two things that are very important. Be good to work with and do good work. And throughout our training, we've been learning how to do good work. This is everything from our machine learning to how do we build databases, how do we manage and administrate our databases if that's what you're working on, and everything that's centered around the technical side of data science. However, being good to work with is something that we won't come across in a typical computer science degree, maybe in these more modern data science degrees, but if you come from a classic background of science, we typically learn research communication, but we don't learn interpersonal skills. This is what I really hope to bring to you, the audience. I really hope this helps. And if there are any tips or if there is anything you would like me to discuss or any questions, please leave a comment. Please email me, ask me personally. It is all okay. And just keep in mind that none of this will help unless you practice. This is all perspective, and everything requires a behavioral change. So go out there, get talking to your colleagues, get talking to people outside of work. Enjoy it, have some fun. The workplace is supposed to be healthy, it's supposed to be nice. And for all of those out there who aren't in a healthy workplace, I really feel for you, and please feel free to message me and talk to me about it, and I'll try and give you any tips. I'll try and help and just give you an ear so that your data science career can be a little bit more enjoyable. Thank you.